Hello, I'm Dave Hiskey, and you're watching the Today I Found Out YouTube channel. In the video today, we're looking at how the practice of women jumping out of cakes got started. Almost everyone has seen depicted the bizarre bachelor party tradition of a scantily clad woman jumping out of a giant cake. It turns up most often in decades-old films, TV shows, and comics, but it still persists today at lavish Vegas shindigs, though the cakes are now usually made of flimsy cardboard. Those of the youthful persuasion may have first encountered the ritual via The Sims House Party, in which the player could buy a huge cake, then choose a command to hire an entertainer. If you're thinking it's a tradition that dates back to the swanky cocktail-fueled pre-feminist Mad Men era, you're only partly correct. Humans have been putting odd things in their food for entertainment purposes for centuries. To begin with, few threw a dinner party like the ancient Romans did, and they may have been the first to seriously combine food and entertainment. That is, the food often was also the entertainment. Wealthy banquet throwers tried to outdo one another with exotic dishes, serving up things like peacocks, ostriches, dormice, and rare songbirds. Stuffing one animal inside another was a particular delight, so that a guest might carve into the belly of a cow to find an entire roasted pig inside. Inside the pig, a lamb, a rabbit, a chicken, and a mouse. Today, this practice is still alive in the rather curious dish that starts with a camel, which is often stuffed with a lamb, which has been stuffed with chickens, which has been stuffed with fish or eggs. The whole lot also tends to have rice and other fixings mixed in at each stuffing stage. Beyond cooked animals stuffed inside other animals, Petronius wrote of dishes staged to make the animals appear as if they were still alive. Fish arranged as if they were literally swimming in the sea of sauce, and a rabbit with a fowl's wing attached, posed to look like the mythical Pegasus. Medieval royals continued the hosting of banquets so elaborate as to be almost grotesque, and they too had a penchant for staging tableaus that made cooked animals appear to be in action. Peacocks, for example, were seasoned and roasted, then arranged and decked out in the original plumage. Grilled roosters were dressed in miniature armor constructed of paper, and perched atop a suckling pig, complete with jousting sword as if ready to do battle. Alcohol was set alight to create a fire-breathing effect from the mouths of unlikely creatures, such as swans or fish. The stereotypical apple that is so often thrust in the mouth of a roasted pig hails from this era, seemingly an attempt to suggest activity, as if the animal were still living and casually munching on a bit of fruit. The use of actual live animals was a natural evolution from all the mimicry. The tradition of the entremet, a between-courses dish served more for entertainment than for eating, was in full swing by the end of the Middle Ages, with wine fountains, castles made of meat, and live actors and musicians rolled in on replicas of ships, reenacting scenes from recent history. Placing living creatures, especially birds and frogs, into giant pies became extremely popular. For instance, it was featured in an Italian cookbook from 1474. Maestro Martini explains how to make a hole in the bottom crust of a pie, stuff it with a smaller pie, and then, in the empty space that remains around the small pie, put some live birds, as many as it will hold. And the birds should be placed in it just before it is to be served. And when it is served, before those seated at the banquet, you remove the cover above and the little birds will fly away. This is done to entertain and amuse your company. And in order that they do not remain disappointed by this, cut the small pie up and serve. The trend continued into the 1600s with famous families like the de Medici surprising guests with live birds and pastry crusts for a wedding party. Robert May, author of the 1660 British cookbook, describes how the birds would tend to flap about and seek the light, extinguishing all the candles, and how the hopping frogs caused the ladies to shriek, creating a diverting hurly-burly amongst the guests in the dark. The phenomenon is referenced in the nursery rhyme Sing a Song of Sixpence, in which 4 and 20 blackbirds are presented in the dish to the king. Today, the practice lives on, in a way, in the form of pie birds, small ceramic birds placed in pies to allow steam to escape. Even though the live bird pie trend ultimately fizzled out, some royals hardly missed it, as they had already taken it to the next level. At a banquet hosted by famed French engineer Philippe Le Bon, among the many ostentatious entremets was an enormous meat pie containing a reported 28 musicians, who played as the giant crust was opened. In 1626, the Duke and Duchess of Buckingham presented Charles I with a pie from which emerged a dwarf. Sir Geoffrey Hudson was given as a gift while he was still quite alive, though internet stories continue to perpetuate the rumor that he met his demise by being baked in a pie. By the 1800s, the humans buried in pastry seemed to be limited to attractive women, as some of the most decadent parties of the era were those given by wealthy men to entertain other important important males while their wives stayed at home. One of those hosts was Stanford White, a rich architect who threw a debauched dinner party in New York City in 1895 for a gathering of other distinguished men, including illustrator Charles Dana Gibson and inventor Nikola Tesla. The feature attraction of the dinner party was an enormous pie out of which, according to famed model Evelyn Nesbit, popped a 15 or 16-year-old beauty, Susie Johnson, wearing only a piece of see-through gauze. Along with the girl, Nesbit reported that there were a lot of birds that when Johnson jumped out, flew all about the room. Nesbit also later stated that, "I told Mr. White I had heard later he had ruined the girl that night, but he only laughed." Just a few years later, the Pie Girl dinner, as it came to be known, was front page news after White was murdered by the enraged husband of Evelyn Nesbit, the latter of which came to be known as the Girl in the Red Velvet Swing. White reportedly raped the teenage Nesbit a few years before while she was unconscious in his home after drinking champagne with him. She then became White's mistress for about a year before breaking the relationship off and later marrying the enormously wealthy Harry Thaw. Thaw was supposedly none too pleased that Nesbit wasn't a virgin, which he found out while obsessively courting her. When she told Thaw this, she also explained to him that she lost her virginity to White when he raped her. Ultimately, this didn't stop Thaw's pursuit of Nesbit, and after a lengthy courtship, she gave in to Thaw's continual attempts to get her to marry him, and the two wed. However, Thaw now harbored an extreme hatred towards White, culminating in Thaw murdering him after yelling something to the effect of, "You ruined my wife." There are conflicting accounts from witnesses as to whether he said wife or life before shooting White. The whole country read the details of the Pie Girl dinner as transcripts came out of the first case of the 20th century the media referred to as the trial of the century. While this may not have been the first time a wealthy man had thought to have a girl jump out of some large food item, it certainly popularized the practice. After reading about it in the news, it didn't take long for regular folks to think that their parties would be better with a woman inside some sort of baked good. By the 1950s, it became downright mainstream for bachelor parties, office wingdings, and conventions to feature an attractive woman in a giant cake, usually in a skimpy bathing suit or completely nude, depending on the audience and event. The cakes were decidedly real, though you can find modern, otherwise reputable sources that mistakenly believe otherwise, perhaps thanks to today's cardboard recreations. For instance, an AP News article in 1975 interviewed a longtime San Francisco baker who made his living charging $2,000 a pop to construct elaborate, layered confections with empty cylinders inside, just large enough to hide an exotic dancer. And if you're wondering, according to the article, a cake jumper could make as much as $50 per cake jumping, or about $217 today. The girls in cakes trends was so pervasive that it's no surprise it turned up so often in popular media of the time. In Some Like It Hot, the 1959 Marilyn Monroe vehicle, a huge cake is rolled into a party, out of which emerges a thug with a machine gun, who begins mowing down the guests as they sing "For He's a Jolly Good Fellow." Noted crime writer Lawrence Block published Stag Party Girl in the aptly named Guy magazine in 1965, in which a stripper is shot almost as soon as she emerges from the icing. A 1955 cartoon panel depicts two chefs in a kitchen, while one attempts to cook a young lady in a huge pot. "No, no, no, Alphonse," says the other chef, "she goes in after you bake the cake." By the end of the 1970s, the popularity of women inside cakes faded as equal rights gained steam. With more and more women in the workplace, scantily clad women in cakes were less welcome at company functions and other such events, leaving only the occasional appearance at bachelor parties as the last vestige of this curious practice. So thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please click that like button below and consider sharing it with anyone you think might be interested. And of course, if you're new to Today I Found Out, don't forget to click that subscribe button to get more interesting videos like this. We release a new video almost every single day, so you're sure to find something you find interesting. Thanks for watching.